I never used to flinch at laughter. Once upon a time, the sound soothed me. Paul's low rumble, Lauren's childish giggle. The messy symphony of a family piecing itself together day by day. But that was before my daughter learned how to laugh at me, not with me. Before the house that once smelled of fresh basil and paint thinner turned into a stage where I played the role of a quiet, fading prop. It was one of those warm California Saturdays, the kind that makes even the air feel golden. I stood near the stove, pulling a tray of shortbread from the oven. The scent was my mother's recipe, the one she handed me the day I left home as a young bride with more hope than sense. I arranged the cookies carefully on a plate, smoothed my apron, and stepped outside where Lauren's guests gathered. She had invited her usual mix, colleagues dressed in linen, Eric's golf buddies comparing scores, and neighborhood women who treated Pilates like a religion. Their laughter swelled as I stepped onto the patio, the sun warming my shoulders. Double quotes cookies. Everyone, I said gently, offering the plate. A few polite hands reached forward. One woman took a bite and murmured, "Oh, these are." She just kind of stays here, Lauren interrupted with a laugh that didn't sound like hers anymore, waving vaguely at me as if I were a lamp, a fixture, a conversational afterthought. Some guests chuckled, uncomfortable, unsure whether to join in or step back. None defended me, not even Eric, who avoided my eyes and sipped his drink. The tray felt suddenly heavy, my hands trembled, but I tightened my grip and smiled. The way women my age are expected to, quietly, gracefully, invisibly. I retreated to the kitchen, set the cookies down, and pretended to busy myself with plates, crumbs, anything to avoid hearing the continued laughter outside. By the time the guests left and the house quieted, I had scrubbed the counters twice. Eric mumbled, "Thanks, Evelyn," without looking up. Not mom, not even mother-in-law. Just, Evelyn. I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. 3 days later, the morning started like any other. Sunlight filtered through the blinds as I reached into the cupboard for a mug. My hand brushed a glass on the drying rack, and it crashed to the floor in a spray of sharp glitter. "Damn," I muttered under my breath, kneeling to gather the fragments. I didn't even hear her footsteps. "What did you do now?" Lauren's voice cut through the air like a snapped wire. "I dropped a glass, I'll clean it." She raised a hand sharply. "Stop, just stop," I froze mid-reach. "You should know your place," she said, each word dripping with something colder than anger. "You think you have a right to be here?" Glass shards pressed into my palm, but I didn't move. "Lauren, I'm your mother." Her laugh was sharp and humorless. "God, you think that matters? You think because you're old, you get a free pass? You think you're entitled to this house because you wipe counters and collect crumbs?" "I didn't mean, I swear to God," she hissed, fishing her phone from her pocket. "If you don't get out of this house, I'll call the cops." I stared at her, breath frozen in my chest. "This is my home," I whispered. "Yours too." "But no," she snapped. "This is my home. You're a guest too comfortable to leave." Her thumb hovered over the call button. And then she pressed it. Double quotes, "Hello." "Yes," she said calmly. "I'd like to report a trespasser." Her voice faded behind me as I stepped out into the backyard, the place that once felt like my sanctuary. My rosemary bushes brushed my ankles. The daisies Paul planted years ago swayed gently, oblivious to the storm unraveling beside them. I stood there, barefoot on the patio, and something inside me, something old and soft, finally cracked. The pieces didn't scatter like broken glass, they sharpened, they aligned. Lauren didn't see me as her mother anymore. She saw me as a problem, but she had forgotten one thing. This house, the soil, the beams, the memories, was still mine. And for the first time in years, I felt the truth of that settle in my bones like steel. We bought the house in the spring of 1983. Paul and I had been married 16 years by then, 16 years of making do, saving every penny, building a life from scratches of opportunity. Our honeymoon had been in a borrowed cabin, where the heater barely worked and we ate canned chili by lantern light. But we were happy. We were always happiest in the simplest moments. The Victorian home on Maple Grove looked tired when we first saw it. The paint was peeling, the windows stuck. The kitchen tiles were older than we were. But Paul ran his hand along the banister and grinned. "Good bones," he said. "Like us." We spent that summer painting the walls green. Lauren, only 6 years old, then danced barefoot on the drop cloths with pigtails crooked and wild. "Careful, honey," Paul warned, smiling. "Or your mom is gonna paint you instead of the walls." She giggled, a soft sound that once healed every ache I ever had. That house saw everything. Late nights, birthday cakes, scraped knees. The day we learned Paul was sick, his last breath taken in the downstairs den because the stairs had become too cruel for him. After he passed, I stayed 5 more years, haunted by memories both sweet and suffocating. In 2011, Lauren suggested I move in with her and Eric. She promised warmth, company, a new beginning. I should have known better. The house remained rented under my name. The deed locked safely away a small whisper of intuition I didn't understand back then. At first, Lauren welcomed me warmly, tea in the mornings, help with unpacking. But slowly, so slowly I almost missed it. The rules appeared. No gardening pots on the patio, no garlic in the kitchen. No TV after 10 p.m. Soon, the home was hers. And I was just a shadow in it. I washed their dishes, folded their laundry, packed lunches, watered roses she didn't notice anymore. I cooked dinners for guests who didn't know my name, and every time she dismissed me, I swallowed the ache. Until the night I overheard her say the words that carved themselves permanently into my ribs, "She's emotional clutter." I didn't cry. I didn't protest, but silence, I learned, is a kind of ledger. And I had been keeping score, but nothing prepared me for the night she tried to take my house. The night she brought out the folder, the night she asked for my signature. The night I said no for the first time in years. And that was the night something in her snapped. My daughter, the little girl who once held my hand in thunderstorms, looked at me not with love, not even with resentment, but with calculated intent, as if I were in the way of something she believed she deserved. And that's when I realized, she wouldn't stop. Not unless I did something unthinkable. Not unless I remembered who I was before she taught herself to forget, and I did. I did. I didn't know it yet, but the next morning would be the last time I ever stepped into that house as someone who was begged to stay. The next time I crossed its threshold, I would be the woman who finally walked away. I didn't sleep the night Lauren tried to get me to sign the house away. I lay in the guest room, the room that was supposed to feel like mine, staring at the ceiling as moonlight drifted across the walls. The shadows looked unfamiliar, and for the first time since Paul passed, I felt the exact shape of being unanchored. Lauren had left the folder on the dining table, an expensive leather binder with gold edges. It sat there, like a trap, half open, waiting for me to walk into it with the obedience she had learned to expect. She really thought I would sign. She really believed I would fold. Maybe because I had folded so many times before. For years I'd bitten my tongue, endured the small humiliations, absorbed the jabs wrapped in smiles, and offered my labor like peace offerings to someone who had forgotten they once needed me for everything. But something cracked that night, something essential. Not a loud crack, not a dramatic one. It was more like a quiet internal click, the sound of a key turning in a door I had kept locked far too long. That night, as I lay there, I replayed the moment she tried to take what was mine. "Mom," she said, smooth as butter, "it's really simple. Just a signature for refinancing, for taxes. It'll help all of us." Her voice was so polished she could have sold ice in a snowstorm, but her eyes were hungry. Double quotes, "Nothing changes," she promised, smiling too widely. "You'll still live here. Double quotes, live here. In my own house. I remembered folding the towel as she stood there, the fabric soft under my hands, my heart beat steady, slow. "No, Lauren. Her shock was genuine. She wasn't used to hearing that word from me. Double quotes, "No," she said, as if I'd just spoken in a foreign language. "No," I repeated, tucking the towel neatly. "That house stays mine." For a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to get frustrated trying to braid her doll's hair. But then her face hardened. She shut the folder loud enough to make me flinch. And then she walked away. I thought that would be the end of it. But I should have known better. Lauren was her father's daughter only in appearance. In ambition, she was something sharper, untethered by ethics or sentiment. And ambition without empathy is a dangerous thing. A week passed before I knew something was wrong. The phone rang early one morning, a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something nudged me to answer. "Mrs. Collins," a polite voice said. "We're calling from Central Valley Bank. We have a few questions about the home equity application you submitted." "My what?" I asked, sitting upright. "The home equity line of credit," the voice repeated cheerfully. "You applied for it last week." "I didn't apply for anything." There was a pause long enough to frost over the air. "Oh, the man said carefully. We have documentation listing you as the applicant. Can you send me the documents? I asked, my voice thin. Of course, ma'am. Within an hour, my email pinged with the files. I sat in silence as I opened them. There it was, my name typed neatly at the top, my address below it. Signatures scribbled at the bottom, but not my handwriting, not even close. Lauren's handwriting had always been distinctive, the kind of cursive taught in private school, confident loops and perfectly crossed T's, and I knew it instantly. She had signed as me. She had attempted to take out a loan against my house. She had told the bank I was elderly and mentally declining. That she was handling all my decisions, that she was the rightful heir. That she, the caretaker, was managing the estate. My hands trembled as I scrolled. She had forged everything. The audacity of it stole the breath from my lungs. This wasn't just a daughter slipping into selfishness. This was theft. This was betrayal sharpened into strategy. This was Lauren deciding that my existence was an inconvenience, and my assets were more useful without me attached. I sat there for a long while, feeling the weight of every year I had raised her. Every night I had stayed awake with her feverish. Every birthday cake I baked from scratch. Every recital I applauded from the front row. It took only a few pages of forged signatures to unravel decades of motherhood. I confronted her that evening, in the kitchen she once helped me renovate when she was 13, insisting the cabinets should be painted lavender because it's calming. Now the air between us was anything but calm. I spoke to the bank, I said, standing in the doorway. She didn't look up from her phone. Okay? I know what you did. Her thumb paused over the screen. Slowly, she set the phone down and turned to face me. You shouldn't be digging into things you don't understand, she said. I understand perfectly, I replied. You tried to steal my house, she sighed, as if I were the problem. Mom, listen, you forged my name, you don't even use that house, she said, exasperated. It's just sitting there. It's mine. She tossed her hair with a scoff. Paperwork doesn't matter. It does, I said firmly. It always has. Lauren stepped closer, lowering her voice. You live here because we let you, because I felt bad leaving you alone. But don't twist this, you've been a burden. The word hit harder than any slap. Burden. After everything, I felt something inside me go very still. A quiet stillness, the kind that grows roots, the kind that can withstand storms. You need to leave, Mom, Lauren continued, 1 week. Or I'll call the police and tell them you're trespassing. She said it so casually, as if she were telling me we'd run out of milk. My daughter, the child I once swore I would protect with every breath, was evicting me from my own life. But she made a mistake. She assumed silence meant surrender. She forgot who held the deed. She forgot whose house she was living in. She forgot who I used to be. And who I still was, beneath the years she had worn me down. That night I made a decision. A quiet one. Not fueled by rage. Not even fueled by heartbreak. It was a decision carved from dignity I had let her chip away at piece by piece until only splinters remained. I rose at 3 in the morning, careful not to disturb the floors. I opened my old suitcase, the one I brought when I moved here, the one that had sat untouched because I kept pretending I belonged in this house. In silence, I packed, to shirts. My wallet, my marriage certificate, Paul's death certificate. One photograph of us on our wedding day. And, most importantly, the deed, not in Lauren's name. Mine. As I slid it gently into the suitcase, something inside me settled. A truth, a reminder, a promise to myself. I was done letting my daughter treat me like a ghost haunting a house she wanted empty. I wrote a note and left it under the teapot she never touched. Lauren, I don't hate you, but I won't stay where I'm unwelcome. Mom. I walked out through the garden, past the rosemary and daisies, the only things that had still felt like mine. I didn't touch them, didn't look back. By the time the sky began to lighten, I was already checked into a small motel near the freeway. The bed was stiff, the blankets thin, but it felt more like home than her house had in years. By 9 a.m., I was sitting across from my husband's oldest friend, Walter. A retired attorney with kind eyes and a mind still sharp enough to split hairs with a sentence. He skimmed the forged documents and shook his head. She can't take your house, he said. Legally, ethically, this is fraud. She has no claim to it. I want to sell it, I said. He didn't even blink. Then let's get started. And just like that, the life I'd been too afraid to protect began shifting back into my hands. By noon, I was standing inside a small real estate office with lavender letters on the glass door reading, Jessica Tran Realty. She had been the daughter of a woman I once worked with at the public library. I remembered her as the shy girl who used to sit in the children's corner reading fantasy novels with her knees drawn to her chest. Now she was a grown woman with confident eyes. I want to sell the house quickly, I told her. No open houses, no fuss, just serious offers. She nodded. I can do that. By evening, she was walking the exterior of the house while I watched from the car. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Not anymore. She returned with a clipboard. Market's hot, she said. You'll get multiple offers, good. Just need your signature to list it. The irony was not lost on me. My daughter had tried to steal my signature, now mine was the one that mattered. With steady hands, I signed. In that moment, I wasn't a burden, I wasn't emotional clutter. I wasn't an unwanted guest. I was Evelyn May Collins. Homeowner. Mother. Woman reclaiming her life. And Lauren had no idea what storm was coming. By the next sunset, 3 offers would land on the table. And by the following morning, my daughter would discover she no longer lived in a house. She lived in someone else's home. Jessica worked faster than I expected, faster than I dared to hope. The listing went live at 8:14 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. It had only 3 photographs, all taken tastefully, with careful angles that made the house look like it had been gently loved instead of quietly mourned. A simple description, charming Victorian mature garden. Owned by the same family since 1983, serious inquiries only, no mention of the people currently occupying it, no mention of the fractures inside. No mention of the woman who had forgotten who the home actually belonged to. By 10 a.m., Jessica texted me, phones buzzing. I'll call you after the first virtual showing. By noon, 3 buyers had reached out. 2 were corporate types with more money than sentiment. But the third was a woman named Diane, a divorced, soft-spoken, 50-something who had recently finalized a settlement and wanted a fresh start. I like the energy, she told Jessica. Feels like a house that knows how to hold people. When Jessica relayed those words to me, something inside my chest tightened, not with grief, but with recognition. The house had held people, it had held me, Paul, even Lauren once upon a time, but houses are not obligated to keep holding those who bruise their walls. By 4 p.m., the offers were in, all above asking, all clean. I didn't choose based on money, I chose based on tone. Diane's offer felt like closure or maybe mercy. Jessica forwarded me the contract. My fingers hovered above the screen for a moment, knowing that this signature would sever the last physical tie between my past and the life I had mistakenly stitched myself into with Lauren. That night, my phone rang so many times that the vibration shook the cheap motel lamp on the nightstand. I didn't need to check the caller ID to know who it was. Lauren, she didn't leave voicemails at first, she rarely did. Voicemails create trails, evidence, responsibility. She preferred conversations she could later deny, reshape, or reinterpret. When she finally left one, her voice was sharp, frantic at the edges. Mom, call me back. Seriously, what are you doing? Jessica contacted me. She has to be lying. You wouldn't do something like this. Her disbelief was almost comforting. It meant she still hadn't realized I was capable of leaving. That night I slept with the phone face down, blissfully silent. I didn't listen to the second voicemail, or the third. I let the calls pile into a tower of desperation. By morning, there were 27 missed calls. And one more voicemail, this one shorter. You can't sell the house, we live here. Mom, what is wrong with you? There it was again. We live here? Not you, not me, we. The word clung to her sense of entitlement like ivy choking a fence. She genuinely believed the life she built inside my walls granted her ownership of them. She believed proximity was inheritance, longevity was entitlement. She believed my silence meant permission. But real love never required one person to disappear so another could expand. At 8:30 a.m., a courier arrived at her door, not mine. I wasn't there to watch it, but I imagined the scene clearly. Lauren in her robe, eyeliner smudged from a night without sleep, opening the door to a man holding a crisp envelope. Her name typed neatly on the front, inside, a notarized transfer of ownership, irrevocable, legal, final, effective immediately. Her home was no longer hers to claim, she was a tenant without agreement. A guest without invitation, a trespasser by law, 7 days to vacate. I imagined her rereading the letter again and again, searching for mistakes. Loopholes, mercy. But there was none. You cannot negotiate with a boundary that should have existed years earlier. By noon, Jessica called me. She left me a voicemail. She sounded panicked. What did she say? She claimed the sale was fraudulent, that she was the rightful owner. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. And what did you say? Jessica's voice sharpened professionally. I said, county records list Evelyn May Collins as the sole legal owner. The sale is valid. This conversation is over, and then I hung up. I felt tears sting my eyes, but they didn't fall. Dignity doesn't always look like steel. Sometimes it looks like a woman quietly exhaling in a motel room as the world corrects itself around her. By the time the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Lauren had called me again. More times than before. The voicemails were different now, less angry, more bewildered. Mom, please. You can't actually be doing this, Mom. Are you confused? Did someone trick you, Mom? Please answer. I don't know what's happening. Each message chipped away at the arrogance she had worn like armor. That night, I lit the small bedside lamp and sat at the edge of the motel bed. The room was eerily quiet, and for a moment I wondered whether I should feel guilt. But guilt only lives where goodness was exchanged. And I had given goodness for years, only to receive indifference in return. I wasn't sabotaging her life. I was stepping out of the ruins of mine. Word travels fast in suburban neighborhoods, faster than truth, faster than reason. By Thursday morning, cars began slowing as they passed the house on Maple Grove. Curtains parted. Garden hoses paused midair. Whispers grew roots. She's getting evicted. No. The house was seized. No. The mother sold it after they fought. No. I heard she forged signatures. That daughter always seemed a bit off. By Friday, the whispers had become stories. Stories had become judgments. Judgments had become entertainment. And Lauren, so careful, so curated, so addicted to appearing put together, began to crumble. She stepped outside with oversized sunglasses and a tight jaw, her perfect hair pulled back. But stress lived in the shadows beneath her eyes. Embarrassment clung to her posture. This wasn't just an inconvenience. This was humiliation. And she knew it. Her neighbors, people she'd once charmed, avoided her eyes. Some pretended not to stare, others didn't bother pretending. She packed slowly, intentionally, as if dragging each moment out would somehow reverse reality. As if time would stop out of sympathy, as if I would return to save her from the consequences she authored. But time doesn't pause for lessons, it delivers them. When the moving truck arrived, she stood by the door, frozen. Eric stood on the driveway, arms crossed, distance carved into his expression. He didn't help her, he didn't carry a box. Didn't offer comfort, didn't soften the blow. When she attempted to hand him a suitcase, he stepped back. I'm going to my mother's, he said flatly. What? Why? I didn't know you went this far, Lauren. Eric, he didn't wait for the rest. He simply got into his car and drove off without a backward glance. She stood there alone, two suitcases at her feet, mascara streaking like ink. When she finally realized he wasn't coming back, she clutched her phone like a lifeline and called me, and called, and called. I didn't pick up, not out of cruelty, but because I had already said everything that needed to be said with my signature. That night around 9 p.m., the buzzer at my new apartment sounded. I had just made tea, mint and chamomile, and the steam curled into the quiet room like a sigh. I checked the camera. Lauren, her face was blotched red, her hair disheveled, her coat too thin for the night. She looked like a child who had wandered too far from safety and realized the world wouldn't catch her. Mom, she whispered into the intercom, please let me in, just for tonight. I have nowhere to go. Her voice cracked on the last syllable. And for a moment, just a small, fleeting moment, the mother in me stirred. But then I remembered the kitchen, the forged papers, the word burden, the threat to call the police, the trespassing report, the years of small humiliations, the disregard. The ASURE. I stepped onto the balcony. She looked up immediately, eyes widening with hope. Mom, she pleaded, pressing her hands together. I'm sorry, please. Please just let me stay. I looked at her for a long moment. Then gently, with no anger, no triumph, only truth, I said, don't ever think you can trick an old woman, especially not your own mother. Her lips parted. The hope drained out of her face like water from cracked porcelain. I turned, walked inside, closed the curtains, and let the silence settle. This time, the silence was not a surrender. It was a boundary, a beginning, a rebirth. Part 3 ends with this rehook. But the world wasn't done teaching Lauren consequences, and I wasn't done rebuilding the woman she thought she had erased. My new apartment was on the 24th floor, a quiet place above the noise, but still close enough to watch the world breathe. The building wasn't fancy, but it was clean, warm, and most importantly, mine, truly mine. Paid for in full with the sale of the house I had spent most of my life tending. On my first morning there, I pushed open the sliding balcony door and let the cold city air brush against my face. Below me, cars crawled like fireflies through the streets, each one carrying its own story, its own heartbreak, its own victories. Everything looked small from up here, manageable, somehow less threatening. I set up a small row of herb pots along the balcony. Mint, rosemary, basil, simple things that made me feel human again. Things Lauren had insisted were clutter in her perfect suburban aesthetic. Paul used to tease me that I couldn't go a week without planting something. "You're a gardener," he said. "You need things that grow." For years, I thought that meant tending to my daughter. I understood now how mistaken I'd been. Gardening meant nurturing things that returned life to you, not drained it. I had barely settled into my chair that evening when my phone buzzed once, then again, then again. Incoming calls, unknown numbers, then Lauren's name. I ignored it and sipped my tea, letting the warmth soothe the place inside me. She had worn thin, but Lauren was persistent. She had always been the type to keep pushing a locked door, convinced that if she jiggled it enough, it would open. 2 hours later, the intercom buzzed. I exhaled slowly, knowing even before I checked the monitor that it was her. Lauren stood below the gate, her shoulders hunched, her hair messy from the wind. She clutched a duffel bag at her feet like it held the last scraps of her dignity. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking, "please. Just tonight, please." I didn't answer, not yet. I watched quietly, letting the weight of the moment settle around us. Lauren pressed her palms against the metal gate, her breath clouding in the cold. I'm sorry, okay, just let me in." Her words trembled with desperation. Not the desperation of someone who wanted forgiveness. The desperation of someone who wanted shelter. There's a difference. I stepped onto the balcony. She looked up immediately, eyes flickering with hope. "Mom," she said louder this time. "Please, I don't have anywhere else." Eric left. "My friends don't want to get involved. I can't go to a hotel forever. Just help me." I held the railing with both hands, grounding myself. Once upon a time, I would have run down the stairs with a blanket. I would have pulled her into my arms, kissed her forehead, told her everything would be okay. Once upon a time, being her mother meant choosing her needs over my well-being, but the woman standing below me wasn't the child I raised. She was the woman who had tried to erase me from my own life. Slowly, I shook my head. "Lauren," I said softly, "you were never homeless. This world is full of homes, full of places to go. But you made me feel homeless in my own house for years. I won't let you do it to me again." "Mom," she cried. I said, "I'm sorry." "No," I replied. "You said you were desperate." She flinched as if I had slapped her. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She sank to her knees on the sidewalk, her breath visible in shaky bursts. "Please," she whispered, "I have nowhere to go." The words echoed in the cold night air. But I knew something she didn't understand yet. Nowhere to go isn't a place, it's a lesson. I stepped back inside and closed the balcony door, not in triumph, but in peace. Inside my apartment, the silence felt warm. Not empty, not lonely, just mine. The next morning, my alarm went off at 6:30 sharp. I made breakfast, watered my herbs, and prepared to step into my new life. I had plans, real plans for the first time in years. A new community center nearby offered writing workshops. A library volunteer position was open. I had brochures for senior yoga, a pottery class, and an evening walking group. Things I never would have done while living under the weight of Lauren's rules. "You should be in bed by 9, no cooking with garlic. It smells up the house. Don't buy plants, they ruin the aesthetic. Don't invite people without asking. Don't leave your quilting stuff in the living room. Don't move things. Don't speak too loudly. Don't take up space." I hadn't realized how small I'd become until I stepped into a space where I could finally expand. At 9 a.m., I sat at my tiny dining table and opened my laptop. I logged into my email, expecting notes from Jessica or Walter. Instead, I found 6 new messages from Lauren. I ignored them all except the last one, colon. Double quotes, "Mom, I can explain everything." Please call me double quotes explain people like Lauren didn't explain they excused they minimized they redirected they rewrote history until they appeared blameless. But explanations don't erase patterns and apologies don't undo threats. I closed the laptop. I wasn't ready to read her words. I wasn't obligated to. That freedom felt like a luxury. By afternoon, I attended my first pottery class. The clay felt cold, heavy, stubborn beneath my hands, much like the life I had left behind. But as I shaped it, pressing and pulling it into form, something unlocked inside me. I had created so many things in my life: a home, a marriage, a daughter. Traditions, meals, memories, but somewhere along the way, I had stopped creating for myself. I had become a mirror for Lauren's needs, a shadow behind her achievements. Now, here in this brightly lit studio among strangers molding bowls and vases, I felt myself forming again. Not into what she wanted, into who I used to be. When class ended, a woman named Maribel offered me a ride home. Her laugh was warm. She told me about her grandchildren and her stubborn cat and her embarrassing failed attempts at making sourdough. She talked to me like I existed, like I mattered. When I stepped out of her car, she waved and said, "See you next week. Evelyn, Evelyn, not mom, not burden, not freeloader, not emotional clutter, just Evelyn, I stood outside my building for a moment, letting the name settle over me like sunlight, When I entered the lobby, the security guard waved me over. "Mrs. Collins. A young woman was here earlier asking for you." I didn't need him to clarify. "She left a note," he added, handing me a small folded paper. I took it but didn't open it. Some wounds heal better without picking at the scab. I thanked him and took the elevator up, standing among people busy with their own lives. A man in a suit, a mother holding her toddler. A teenage girl with headphones too big for her head. The elevator doors opened on the 24th floor, and I stepped into the quiet hallway that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. Inside my apartment, I set the note on the table without reading it. Not out of spite, out of peace. Later that evening, as the city lights flickered on like stars rising from the ground, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The world outside glowed with warmth and possibility. Then my phone buzzed again. Lauren. She had become a ghost, haunting my new life, one who kept knocking but didn't realize the door had been locked long before she arrived. I stared at her name for a long moment before turning the phone over, face down, not in cruelty, in boundary. I wasn't punishing her, I was protecting me. A day passed, then 2, then 3. On the 4th day, there was a knock at my apartment door. Not the buzzer below. My door. I froze, heart thudding. Slowly, I stepped forward and looked through the peephole. Lauren. She stood there holding a paper bag, her cheeks blotched from crying or sleepless nights. Her hair was tangled, and her lips trembled with the effort to hold herself together. "Mom," she whispered through the door. "Please talk to me." I closed my eyes, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too long, too deeply, too hard, and it had cost me myself. I didn't open the door. Her voice cracked. "Are you even listening? I am scared. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do." She slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know I hurt you. I know, I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't being fair. I wasn't good." Her apology was thin, uncertain. Ungrounded. It reached for absolution without touching accountability. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please don't give up on me." And maybe years ago, I would have. Maybe years ago, I would have opened the door, but pain changes people. So does clarity. So does freedom. So does the realization that sometimes the person you're saving is drowning you. I stayed silent. Eventually, she stood. She wiped her eyes. She left. I watched her walk down the hallway. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt whole. For the first time in a very, very long time, Lauren didn't come back the next day. Or the next. For a while, the world quieted. My phone stopped buzzing, the intercom remained silent. I watered my balcony herbs, attended my pottery class, joined a walking group, and slowly began stitching together a life that felt real, not borrowed, not conditional, not lived in someone else's shadow. But healing isn't a straight line. Sometimes it circles back. Sometimes the past knocks. Sometimes it arrives holding something you thought you'd forgotten. And sometimes, it arrives holding nothing at all. It was a little afternoon on a Tuesday when I found the note she'd left at the front desk days earlier. I had almost forgotten about it, almost convinced myself I didn't care. But curiosity has a way of tugging at old wounds. I opened the folded paper with trembling hands. There was no apology, just 4 words. Please don't leave me. I stared at the handwriting, her handwriting, and felt the ground shift beneath years of exhaustion. Not because I wanted to run back to her, not because I felt responsible for her choices, but because the sentence didn't come from entitlement. It came from fear. And fear, I knew, was the only language Lauren never learned how to articulate without masking it as anger. I sat on the edge of my sofa for a long while, note in hand, staring at the city outside my window. Cars moved, birds soared, life continued as if mine hadn't been shaken to its roots. Something inside me softened just a fraction, just enough to wonder, what would Paul have told me to do? Then I remembered something he once said when Lauren was 16 and slammed her bedroom door so hard the picture frames rattled. 2 weeks passed before I saw her again. It was a chilly morning. Gray skies, the kind of day where even the birds seemed tired. I was returning from a writing workshop, clutching my notebook, humming softly under my breath, a habit I hadn't had since Paul was alive. As I approached the entrance of my building, I saw a familiar figure sitting on the stone ledge near the door. Lauren. She sat with her knees pulled up, arms wrapped tightly around them, her hair tucked behind her ears in disheveled strands. Her clothes looked worn, not dirty but lived in, like she'd been staying somewhere temporary, somewhere transitory. She saw me before I could turn away. Mom. Just 1 word, but it carried 100 more beneath it. I stopped several steps away. Lauren, I said gently. She stood slowly, as if her body were heavier than she remembered. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time since she was a child, I saw no confidence, no arrogance, no blame. Just vulnerability. Can we talk? She asked. I'm listening. Her throat bobbed in a shaky swallow. I'm staying with a coworker for now, but it's not. I don't know how long I can stay. I nodded but didn't speak. And Eric, she continued, her voice cracking, he won't return my calls. He said he needs space. Single quotes, double quotes. Her eyes filled with tears. She seemed embarrassed to let fall. Double quotes. Everything is falling apart. I'm sorry you're hurting, I said softly. She blinked rapidly, wiping her cheek with the back of her hand. I didn't expect you to say that. What did you expect? She looked down. I don't know. Anger, maybe. Nothing. There was a long silence. Finally, I asked, why did you come today? She hesitated, then whispered, because I don't know who else to go to. Her voice cracked in a way that pulled something deep inside me, a memory of holding her feverish body as a toddler, whispering that Mama was right here. But memories are not obligations. And wounds disguised as nostalgia can reopen easily. Lauren, I said gently, why did you treat me the way you did? She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. I don't know, she whispered. I think I was angry all the time, at everything. At the house, at feeling responsible, at you acting like you didn't need me. At Dad leaving me too soon, she inhaled shakily. At myself. Her honesty surprised me. But it came too late for reconciliation. I didn't mean to lose you, she said. I didn't mean to become someone you couldn't recognize. I looked at her, really looked at her, this grown woman, this child I once knew, this stranger I had lived with for years. She wasn't evil, she wasn't heartless. She wasn't beyond redemption. She was broken, just like me. But healing brokenness doesn't require mending together. Sometimes it requires stepping apart. You didn't lose me, I said gently. You pushed me away. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing softly. I know. I'm so sorry. I stepped closer, not to hug her, not to hold her, but to make sure she saw the truth in my eyes. I accept your apology, I said, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back. She lowered her hands, her eyes wide and wounded. Then what does it mean? It means I'm letting go, I said. Of the hurt, of the fear, of the silence. Of the version of me you insisted I become. I touched my chest. I'm choosing myself now. She shook her head. So that's it? You don't want me in your life anymore, I swallowed. I don't want the version of you who hurt me. If you become someone healthier someday, maybe we can talk. But I can't carry you anymore. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I thought mothers never leave. I didn't leave, I said softly. I finally stopped staying. Tears welled again, Can I call you sometimes? Not for now, I answered gently. She nodded slowly, absorbing the words like stones in her hands, heavy but real. After a moment, she asked quietly, "Do you hate me?" "No," I said, "but I love myself now." That's the difference. A long silence stretched between us, soft, painful, honest. Finally, she whispered, "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Lauren." She turned and walked away down the sidewalk, her figure growing smaller with each step. She didn't look back, neither did I. When I returned to my apartment, I set my notebook on the table and walked straight to the balcony. The sky was painted shades of gold and orange, fading into deep blue. Lights flickered on in the distant towers. I leaned against the railing, older, wiser, heavier in some ways, lighter in others. For the first time in decades, I wasn't someone's mother. I wasn't someone's caretaker. I wasn't someone's burden. I wasn't someone's silent shadow. I was simply Evelyn, a woman with her own front door, her own air to breathe, her own silence to fill with peace rather than dread. A woman who had finally understood, love without boundaries is just self-destruction in disguise. I closed my eyes and let the wind brush against my face, carrying the scent of the herbs behind me, mint, rosemary, basil. Life, slowly, I whispered to the evening air, I remember who I am, and for once, the world whispered back, finally, the end. But the final confrontation wasn't at my door. It was somewhere deeper, where mothers and daughters meet at the crossroads of blood, betrayal, and the last chance at redemption.